Hello, 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 and welcome back to the Just Follow Joy podcast. My name is Ariana Joy. I'm your host, and I'm a human design reader and teacher. And I am so excited you're here. Today, the reason I'm excited you're here is we are talking about how to help children thrive according to their human design, specifically their energy type and profile lines. Basically, how all of us can work with the way these children are designed instead of against it, so they can grow up knowing how to operate in a way that's right for them, so they can trust who they are, trust their intuition, hone their intuition from a young age, understand their gifts, lean into their inclinations, and learn how to use that to succeed in a way that works for them, even if it looks like, hey, other kids are doing it differently, or other kids' parents are telling them that they have to do things differently. And originally I was going to do this all in one episode, but it was getting way too long, so we're going to make this a two-parter. Today is part one. We are talking about energy type, and part two is going to be profile lines. So I actually had a list of different topics I was thinking about recording today, and honestly, this one just jumped out off the page to me because it just made me so happy to do it. I was so lit up. Mostly because this is a super, super helpful thing for parenting and supporting children. Not just knowing that we all operate differently, but knowing why your kid operates the way they do. Also, when the founder of human design was developing the system, he actually did a lot of it with children in mind, because childhood is when most of our very natural tendencies and inclinations get conditioned out of us by the world, and mostly by the people closest to us, who are usually our parents or guardians. And, they didn't mean to do that to us. They didn't mean to hurt us. In fact, it was to help us. It was to make sure we succeed and thrive and have good lives, depending on what they know about how the world works, or what they think about how the world works. It's to make sure we succeed and thrive and have good lives, so we can guarantee for ourselves that we make the most out of our time on Earth, or even just to make sure that we survive. But what's so ironic is that since most of the world doesn't really take into account that children basically have this GPS in them already, we all do, it's just particularly strong in children, and everyone's GPS directs them different ways and at different rates and works differently and has a different interface. This really prevents kids from following how they were designed to approach life. And truly, it is more important now than ever for us to understand that. Because we're making a really big energetic shift in just a few years in 2027. And in fact, the shadow of that, they call it, is something we've already begun to feel for quite a few years now. So when we make that shift, it's not like it's going to be a switch flipped. We've been leaning into it over time and moving into it over time. But basically, in this new era, we're going to have new objectives for humanity. And there will be a new set of skills that is going to help us thrive, each of us. And those are going to come from the internal authority we have through our own intuition, desires, and unique designs. So basically, the better each of us can become at living our lives according to the way that we're designed and we are specifically structured, and not trying to fit into this cookie cutter way of life, or thinking this is exactly how it had to be because this is how my grandparents did it and my parents did it and my siblings did it and everyone around me seems to achieve. When we can detach from that, that's going to be incredibly helpful to not just help us survive, but thrive in this new world. And Ra Uru Hu didn't have all the predictions of what was going to happen. He made predictions based on, the information he channeled when he first created human design. And then he also, intuited some stuff. But he said, I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen. I just know that this is generally it. But he did say for sure that the people who will thrive in this new time and frequency are going to be the people who know how to do the things in a way that works for them, because that's the way they were meant to do them. So, in trying to squish and change our kids, who are the future, who are the new generation, who are going to be us, into what we think they should be according to how things are now or how things have been in the past so that they succeed, we're cutting them off from the things that will actually truly help them succeed. And time and time and time again, when I get clients coming to me getting readings and I'm telling them, this is the way you're built to operate, I hear from them, yeah, I've been doing that since I was a kid, but I learned at a really early age that I wasn't supposed to do that. And no matter who you are, conditioning is a part of the human experience. So it's not like we can protect our younger generations from any conditioning at all, and it's going to be 100% pure, and they're going to be living the designs at all times, and there aren't going to be any mistakes or mess ups that any of us make along the way, including the kid themselves. That's just part of, being alive, and that's okay. But knowing that we're all meant to function differently at a fundamental level can help us not just understand each other, but appreciate each other a lot more and support each other in helpful ways. When we do that, each of us can create amazing things in our lives for ourselves and for others. Anyway, I'm kind of going on a tangent right now, but one more thing. Before I say anything else, I want to let you know that, of course, this is your life. If you have kids and you're using human design to learn how to work with them, these are still your kids. They're not mine. They're not Ra Uruhu's. They're not the human design communities. This is really only meant to help you understand how your kid works, especially if they're very different from you and you have a hard time understanding them, or they have like what seem to be very strange quirks to you, or if your kid seems to be a lot like, your partner or other people in your family and you might be the odd one out. This is just to help you work together a little bit more and understand your kid according to his or her or their chart. But I know that family dynamics are already complicated without human design. So as always, please, 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 please take what feels empowering and helpful from this. That's always the deal here. So let's start with manifestor kids. Why not? We always start with manifestors. So here's the thing. They're just one of a kind. And no matter what your energy type is, if you are the parent of a manifestor child, it's gonna feel different than having a different kid, because you gotta let them do their own thing that they want to do. Young manifestor kids, not all of them, but most of them, will look like they have poor impulse control, but it's really just, I want to do this, so why wouldn't I go do it? And don't like to be stopped from doing that. And that can be a tough thing to deal with as a parent, because you want your children to be able to live their design. You want them to be able to take healthy action. But at the same time, it can freak people the fuck out when their kid's just walking off a deck or like, I think I'll just go check out this knife. That seems cool, because that's what my impulse is. So there is a balance to having a manifestor child. And even though they do say that, manifestor kids, they'll be fine. Like, they're not meant to follow an impulse that's going to hurt them. And they also, there's this whole thing about like their aura is very protective. That's part of like the repelling aura. But at the same time, you need to act, they're kids. Like, I know you're going to want to look after your kid and keep them safe and make sure you're guiding them. And, they're not adults. They still are children. So the big thing here is, as a kid, you have to make them understand that letting you know what they're doing is helpful for everyone. Praise them for informing you and letting you know what they're doing. And as much as possible, don't immediately go in with, oh my God, you're going to do that. No, don't do that. I'm going to stop you, because they'll learn that they can't do that. They don't have freedom when they tell you what they're going to do. With manifestor kids, I think it's really important because they have such a big energy, and it can even be a little overwhelming or intimidating for parents, because it's kind of like, oh, this kid kind of looks like they want to raise themselves. They don't really want to listen to me. It can be a question of, am I telling this kid what to do just because I don't like the fact that they are so self-guided? Or am I telling them to do this thing because I'm really trying to, keep them safe? But something else that you'll probably notice as the parent of a manifestor is that when you tell them, hey, just let me know, and that will make things a lot easier for all of us if you just tell me, when they feel safe to do that, they'll start telling you what they're about to do. And you'll notice that it's likely a lot of the stuff they're doing actually isn't that scary or bad. You just didn't know what was going on because they just weren't telling you. It's easy to assume, like, if your kid just takes off, it's like, where the fuck are you going? What are you doing? You're trying to kill yourself? What's happening? So once you know and you're a little bit more in on their aura, that removes a lot of the misunderstanding. It's just like between an adult manifestor and someone else. And a really great way to open up communication with a manifestor child is actually for you to inform them of what's going on. Here's the thing about manifestor kids. They feel oftentimes cut off from other people. Like, not that they can't communicate and make friendships and relationships. My niece is a manifestor and she has lots of friends. It's more that because of their closed aura, they just feel like there's kind of a wall between them and other people sometimes. But it's not necessarily that they want that wall there. A lot of Ra Uruhu, who was a manifestor, said that a lot of manifestor children, they're very tribal. They do want to connect with the people around them, but because of the way that their aura is figured or configured, it just feels a little bit harder to them sometimes, especially since oftentimes they'll want to go off and do their own thing. Many manifestors are kind of lone riders. Doesn't mean that they don't like people around them, but at the end of the day, they're kind of meant to operate independently. They have to in order to like go do their own thing. So oftentimes with manifestor kids, the group will be doing something and the manifestor kid will be like, no, thanks. I'm going to go over here and play with this like toy action figure, whatever, while you guys are doing, group time together or, trying to collect their friends to follow them to go do that. So they want to do their own thing, but they also don't want to, feel left out or feel left out of the loop. So as a parent or a guardian or an adult, what you can do is start telling them what you're doing a lot. Or like, hey, did you know that we're all getting together and doing this? Hey, did you know that I'm doing this right now? When you can open up that flow of communication, when you can make it normal, they will start catching on to that because they're kids too. Like they're going to absorb things like a sponge. Another really important thing for manifestor kids is something I alluded to earlier, which is the fact that they tend to kind of go their own way and even piece out from the crowd and what the crowd is doing sometimes. And that can look like they're not listening or they're just stubborn. But most of the time, they're not trying to be stubborn or willful or rebels even. They just want to do their thing and they're not really noticing how that's like affecting the group or, that other kids might not really be working that way. Also, manifestor kids, in my opinion, rightly so, most of the time will think, yeah, I'm doing my own thing. What's it to you? And manifestor adults are often like that too. And it's because people who don't go along with the group or don't conform to what the group is doing, oftentimes that sets off alarm bells in people's minds because a lot of people aren't comfortable doing that. But a manifestor is pretty naturally drawn to doing that if their desire leads them in a different direction than the way the group is going. It won't always necessarily. Sometimes the manifestor will want to do what the group is doing. But oftentimes them wanting to go a different way will... it will kind of threaten the structure that's been in place already, whether it's been put in place by another kid or by a teacher. Like, okay, we're all going to run this way to warm up for PE today. And the manifestor's like, no, I want to run that way. It doesn't really make a difference. But a lot of us, and I'm guilty of this. I really have to keep myself in check around my manifestor friends and my manifestor niece. A lot of us will think like, why do you think you just do your own thing? Like, what's wrong with you? Why are you being so selfish? Well, it's like, it really doesn't affect us. It really does. It doesn't make that much of a difference. So sometimes manifestor kids can feel like, why am I always doing this wrong? Like, why am I always getting in trouble or being told like, we don't do that. This is what we're doing right now. Like, why do I seem to not be able to just like cooperate? I'm trying, but I just really want to go play with that butterfly over there. And I hate to say this, but oftentimes, again, because manifestor kids have such a big energy and they naturally embrace that, when they're not conditioned away from it, they naturally embrace their solidity and their power and their big, big energy and aura. The thing is that it can be intimidating, not just to the kids around them. So sometimes manifestor kids actually get bullied, but to the adults around them. Adults around them might call them probably not bossy, but, stubborn or misbehaving or label them as problem kids or treat them as problem kids, when in reality, they're sensing that they can't control this kid. And that might scare them a little bit. I don't know if I would say it would scare an adult, but it might annoy them. Like, why isn't my authority really affecting this child in the same way, and might take it personally even. And again, people do this with adult manifestors too. So if you are working with or raising a manifestor child, really, really helping them embrace their power, helping them lead themselves and developing that trust within them from an early age. And also not taking it personally when they want to do something different than the group, including your family, because they might. And it's really not personal. It's not that they don't want to hang out with you. It's not that they don't think the group is good enough for them or what the group is doing is good enough for them. It's just because they're kind of on a roll on their own and they don't want to get blocked from that. So next, on the opposite side of the spectrum, are our generator kids. So the first thing about generator kids, and I've mentioned this before, and I don't think I've mentioned this on this podcast actually, but one of the most important things about being a generator is that we have very quick access to our sacral response. So our yes, no response from our body through our voice, through our, I think it's I can't remember the name of the cord right now, but it's through our vocal cords. So naturally, every generator answers a yes or no question with uh-huh or uh-uh. Uh-huh means your sacral center's energy is turned on by that thing. So that thing is right for you. That's the correct thing for you to be putting your energy into. On the other hand, uh-uh is like, nope, no access. I don't have energy for this. This is a no. Don't go this way. All generators and manifesting generators are born with this. And if you are a generator or a manifesting generator as an adult, you still have access to this and you still naturally do this. It's just that as children, where it's very strong. Generator and MG kids do this as soon as they can make sounds, really. The thing is, it's conditioned out of them because they're taught, use your words. It's impolite to grunt at people like a caveman. Well, what's so unfortunate about that is that this is really the most potent way, an easy way for generators and MGs to tap into the power of their sacral center, which is what helps us make the correct decisions for us that turn out in the best possible way, even if it doesn't look like it makes sense on the outside. And it's a really important way to help us learn to trust ourselves too. It's so simple, it's so easy, and we're pulled away from it like as soon as we can be. It's crazy. And it's always possible to re-access this or kind of reactivate this as an adult. You probably still do it when you don't realize you're doing it. So when someone catches you off guard and says like, hey, do you want pasta for dinner? And you're like, uh-huh. Or I was about to say, because I really don't want pasta right now. But it's that, it'll pop up for you. And you also don't have to vocalize with uh-huh and specifically. But if you can, in my experience, it has helped me reconnect with my sacral center. But again, you can say yes or no. A lot of manifesting generators will actually feel a pull or a push away from something. And all generators and manifesting generators could just have the words like or yes or, or no just pop out of their mouths. I've said this before, but my friend, she, before she can even stop it, no will just pop out of her mouth. She'll have to be like, no, thank you. I'm not interested in that. Another important thing too is as much as possible. I know that sometimes it feels like there are obligations, to family members or to, other kids, etc. As much as possible, do not guilt a generator child or an MG child into doing something because it makes them a quote unquote good kid. This is some of the hardest conditioning to break, along with, going to our heads because we don't trust our sacral centers. This is some of the hardest conditioning to break as a generator or MG child gets older, because all generators and MGs know that they're here to lift the world up. But if they think that's through doing shit they don't want to do, that they have to sacrifice themselves to be good people, to help other people, they're going to drain themselves. They're going to get on the wrong track for themselves. And that's not what we want for generators and MGs. Also, remember that the sacral center only responds in yes and no, and it needs something to respond to. So if you ask a generator kid, like, what do you want? What do you want for dinner? What do you want to do after school? What hobbies do you want to do? They're probably going to be like, I don't know. Or they might get really stressed out if you keep pressing them, and there could be tears that come out. I'm sure there are parents of generator kids who know that well. I actually had a client who was a manifestor, and her daughter was a generator, and she was getting a reading for her daughter to understand her better according to her design. And when I told her this, she was like, oh my God, that makes so much sense, because when she was a little kid, I would ask her, like, what do you want to eat? She's like, I don't know. And she was like, what do you mean? What do you mean you don't know? Like, what am I going to feed you? And it's because she, as a generator, needed to have the thing in front of her or said to her for her to have the answer. And it's so funny with generator kids. They can be like, nope, 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 nope. Like, okay, well, what do you want to actually eat? Eventually you will find the thing, but you need to find the right thing for them to respond with, oh, yeah, I want that. Just because, there are more things that are a no for any of us than there are yeses. There are always going to be more no's for us in the world than yeses. And generator kids are, because they're not as pulled away from their sacral response, they're pretty committed to it. So They'll tell you if something is no. You just got to listen. And that's a really good thing because we want our generators and manifesting generator kids to be really good with boundaries and no's. And nope, I don't want to do that. Stop trying to convince me to do that. We want them to be able to say that kind of thing. Now, manifesting generator kids specifically. Something to know about them is that their creative process or their thinking process is really, really fast. It's really internal and probably confusing on the outside. This comes from them being part manifestor. So as a parent or a guardian or a teacher or whoever that's working with this kid, don't judge this because, or don't worry too much because they're really meant to be all over the place. In one way or another, MGs are kind of meant to be messy, and that's okay. Another thing is don't force them to finish everything they start or tell them they're flaky. If they can't finish a book or they, start a hobby, but, they're not as interested in it this next year, this next season. Instead, just allow them to try a bunch of different things and have different ideas that they don't necessarily keep doing or, it's not a train they keep riding. That's not really the point. For them, it's being able to dive into something really quickly because they have a gift of pivoting and then allowing them to just switch it up. They don't need as much time to figure out if they want to do something. They don't need as much time before they move on to something else. Another thing about MG kids is that it might not look like it from the outside, but they're picking things up really fast, which is part of the reason why they get bored so quickly. And, they're probably going to want to have a bunch of different hobbies at once that don't make any sense with each other. And that's totally fine. Let them. They may master one or all of them, or they may not, but that's not really the point. The point is that MGs are at their most fulfilled and healthiest when they're allowed to have cylinders, like all cylinders firing at once. So when it comes to projector kids, the main thing to know about them is that they really want to be heard and feel appreciated and feel seen. Projectors often feel like the middle children of human design, like the invisible middle child or the miserable middle child. Not all of them. It's not like they're all acting like they're victims, but oftentimes they will feel like I don't feel like I'm seen like other people. I don't feel like when I talk, people want to hear me as much. So what's really important for projector kids, I think the number one thing, this is important for everyone. It's important to impress into all children and all people, but particularly for projectors and young projectors, is you matter no matter what it is you're doing. You have value through what you see, through what you are, through what you know. You don't have to be the person doing the most for me to love you or for anyone to love you. It's important for you to see that in yourself first. Everyone's going to have their own journey in life, so I can't guarantee that alone is going to make your kid understand their own value that way. Yeah, we all kind of have to pick that up on our own, and there's conditioning from the outside world that has nothing to do with your family as well. But this is how you can support a projector child. And then also when it comes to like day-to-day actions, ask them what they think about things so they know that they don't have to push to be heard. People will ask them, because as a projector, when you trust that and then you see the value in yourself, you naturally start magnetizing people to you to ask you questions and to ask you what your opinion is and to treat you as, a master of what you do and respect you for that and see your value. So when you can create an environment that supports them believing that they can do that, it's going to make life a lot easier for them growing up, or at least as easy as possible from what you're doing. Also, all non-sacral beings take on sacral conditioning from the world, but projectors tend to be very susceptible to it and take it kind of personally when they can't work as much or keep up with the people around them, especially if as a child they're the only projector in their family, which, happens fairly often. My sister is the only projector in our family. Me, my mom, my dad, and my brother, we're all either generators or manifesting generators. And I know that for these kids, it can feel tough for them because they're like, God, I got to keep up, while the rest of their family just seems to be whizzing by or doesn't need as much rest or doesn't need to like chill out as much. And oftentimes parents won't really understand this about a projector kid if they themselves are generators or manifesting generators or even manifestors. They understand a little bit more because they also have an undefined sacral center and can't do as much work. But this can lead a sacral parent, not on purpose, to push their projector kids too hard because they don't know that the kid isn't built to have the same energy levels as them. So they might think like, why why are you just relaxing? Like, why aren't you doing more? Why aren't you spending more time studying or achieving or striving? And that's like the last thing a projector kid needs to hear. They need to feel like they can have an environment where they are not judged for resting and taking the time they need. It's so important for them, because that's one of the biggest things I deal with my projector clients in real life. It's like, no, I must continue to strive, which is so understandable. We're living in a world that just tells you that's the case. So a projector kid needs a safe haven at least from their family, that tells them like, hey, we know that you operate differently. We're here to support you that way. Of course, we want you to achieve and live your best life. But if you want to do it in a bathrobe, like, go for it. And definitely do take time to let them know how proud of them you are when they achieve something that they're proud of. Because projectors, a lot of them spend a lot of their life just hoping someone's going to notice what they did. And last, of course, are my beautiful reflector children. So one of the biggest things that reflector kids will deal with is people not really taking their sensitivities seriously. And again, it's almost never on purpose. It's just that they don't understand. So they'll either directly or tacitly tell the the reflector child, turn that off. Like, we don't need that. That's not important. Turn off your sensitivity. It's not helpful. Which is such a bummer, because that's what reflectors are here for. It's one of their greatest superpowers, is their sensitivity to things, or their ability to perceive. That's what their sensitivity is. It's just a crystal clear ability to perceive and truly know energy around them. So when a reflector child says, I don't feel good here, it's not because they're being like a wuss. It's because they're literally picking up on bad energy in a place. They're very sensitized to it in a way that you, as a parent, if you or a guardian or any adult, if you aren't also a reflector, you don't have a lot of open centers or undefined centers, you're not going to pick up on it in the same way. It doesn't mean either way is worse or better, but this child is picking up on frequencies and picking up on things that many people will not. And just because they're not picking up on it doesn't mean it's not real, and doesn't mean it's not serious. So when a reflector kid says, I don't feel good here, I don't like it, I feel really off, I feel really anxious, this is not a good place for me, we need to not just take that seriously for the kid and be like, all right, let's head out of here. We can go somewhere else, or we can sit in a different place in this spot. Not just do that, but take note of that, because this kid is picking up on the energy that's there, and that's going to actually affect all of us. We just might not be as aware of it, or as, it might just not be as like blaringly obvious to our nervous system. And because reflectors are so chameleonic in every way, it's also really important to allow these children to show up in different ways every day. Also, allow them to show up with different energy levels every day. Don't try to push them to be super consistent, because they're just not built to be. They're built to be conditioned by not just who and what they're around and where they are, but also like a crap ton of stuff going on cosmically. They're very in tune with the moon. They're very in tune with the stars. Like, I have a friend who's a reflector who's an astrologer, and I'm like, go figure, that totally makes sense. But they're a little bit like MGs, where it's like, I'm really interested in this today. I'm really interested in this today. Now I really like this. Now I really want to do this. Now this is my hairstyle. Now this is what I'm wearing. There's this, I'm pretty sure I've mentioned this before, but one of my favorite scenes from Bob's Burgers is when the son, Gene, is like, this is me now. And the sister goes, where have we heard that before? And it has this montage of him wearing like all these different costumes saying, this is me now. This is me now. That's kind of how it feels to have to have a reflector child sometimes. Like, geez, you're a new person every day. Or because they take on so much of their family, because it's usually who they hang around the most. It's very unsurprising when a reflector has like a very big identity crisis when they leave for college, especially if they've been in a family where it feels like, no, this is who you are. We have decided this is who you are. You were like this at one point in your life, and we liked that label, so we're going to keep you in this box because, not to point any fingers here, but sometimes reflectors will show us sides of ourselves we're not too keen on, and not everyone can deal with that, which I get. But also because I think the more loving reason and the more likely reason is we're all told that we need to know who we are. And if you are the parent of a reflector child, it can be a little worrisome, if you don't know this is how they're built to be, when they don't like seem to have this consistent identity, or they don't seem to have any one thing they're holding on to. Like, they're kind of this leaf floating in the wind. That can worry parents, understandably, because they're like, oh shit, like, is my kid gonna stick to anything? Like, or like, what are they gonna do? I remember I was listening to a podcast episode on Find Your Awesome, Kelsey Abbott, my friend, go listen to it, with a reflector who, when her mom asked her what she wanted to do, she's like, I don't know, I'm figuring it out. I like kind of like this thing, but I just almost like, I don't think what I want to do is like really made yet. And her mom was like, okay, are you ever going to have like a real job? And she created her own job. She became a podcast coach, which is so cool. I'd literally never heard of that before. I'm pretty sure she like made that up. And it works. It's her job and she feels fulfilled by it, but it doesn't live in this box of a career. And oftentimes reflector kids will feel like black sheep, especially if it feels like everyone else around them like has this very solid idea of where they're going. And a reflector kid will be like, I mean, I don't know, I kind of want to do a lot of different things. I have a lot of different ideas for what I want to do. Or, you know, they go through their life and it's like, I feel like I keep having different purposes. I find new things that feel like they're what I'm supposed to do. And that's totally okay. It's really normal for the path of a reflector to wind like that. It is for anyone, like even people with defined G centers who have this like monorail towards what they're meant for. Even they can change their purposes. So understanding that about a reflector child. And the last thing that's really important for them is do not force them to move too quickly. They need to learn to trust themselves to take time on making decisions. The last thing you want to do for a reflector child, because remember, their strategy and their authority revolve around the lunar cycle. So they need more time to really know whether or not they want to do something, if it's right for them. So getting a really snap decision from them. And I'm not saying like, what do you want for dinner? Or do you want to go to your friend's house tomorrow? But more like, you know, where do you want to go to college? Would you like to go to this private school, or do you want to go to this public school where the rest of your friends are going? Or, you know, what classes do you want to take next year? Like, give them more time for that, even if it means starting a little bit earlier on figuring out what they're supposed to be doing. Because they need to learn that it's okay to do that, that they're not going to have to rush through every decision to be successful in life. That's really key. And with that, I think this is where we're going to end this one. Part 2 is going to be all about profile lines in kids' charts. And that's going to be super, super fun. So stay tuned for that. Until then, you rock, and I will see you next time.